We get the visas eventually. I don't know how they pull it off. But then we get this escort to the place where we are supposed to be going. We get to where we are supposed to be going in Buer, which is like 5 hours or 4 hours away from the capital. And then you get there and there's no accommodation that has been booked. Where are we going? Like, how prepared are you for us?
So would you say it was on the back of that? That's what now gave you the confidence to now say, because I still assume even after doing all of these things, you're doing well in tournaments, to be able
Yep.
to now say, I want to apply for to be on the CA board of Madrid Worlds.
Yeah.
That's a different level. Where was this confidence coming from? How did you approach the process? Because I know, by the way, applications are still open. Are now still open. By the way,
I know
So,
people are applying and
people are
I know the
applying.
exact thing they're going through.
Yeah, yeah, and I like to think that there is a state of mind that you should be in. There's some sort of preparation that you should be having. Because for me, this is the biggest honor for any
Yeah.
debater. If you start debating, to be on the beat, like that's the best you can sort of like do in terms of like an honorary position. What went into that level of preparation and then accessing that opportunity?
I think a couple of things happened. One, I got a lot of validation through performance. So
Mm,
I think one thing I keep saying is that if you're going to be on the WDCCAP, you at least need to be competent. And I
mm,
think I got that validation of competency from having CA'd a lot of competitions, including major big competitions online. And then the second, and I remember I judged the finals of
mm.
WDC Korea.
Oh
And
yes, yes, that's true.
I give credit to Boemo, like regardless of any other dramas between us. Man, that guy, he came through for us in Korea and he was
Massive.
very encouraging. And he was like, bro, you're doing well. Like you can rise to the top of this thing. And I remember I was in the equity team for Korea Worlds, and this is the moment I decided I was gonna do it. Do you know Dan Lahaf literally
Mm.
were talking and he was like, you should apply for WDC.
Wow.
Like your performance is very good and I think you would do well. And I asked him for advice. The other person who really encouraged me was Milosh, the CA of
Mm-hmm.
Belgrade. He was like,
Mm.
bro, you must apply. So all these people are telling you you must apply, and they must be
Yeah.
seeing something new that you're not. Because I was a bit like, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm still
Yes.
learning. I have that problem of like sometimes just belittling where I am. And he was like, no,
Mm.
bro, you have to apply. So I won't mention more names, but everyone around was like, bro, apply, apply, apply. And there's that consensus that you're
Mm-hmm.
ready. And I was like, okay, let's do this. But what people also don't know is that that application process is harrowing. It's a
Yes.
harrowing process. The amount of writing, I think my thing was like 72 pages. Have you ever written a 72-page application for something? That's how long the application for my DCA ship was. So I was going to everybody who has done worlds before, and I was
Mhm.
like, read my application, read, please send feedback.
Yes.
And that's what most applicants don't do. They write their own
Yes.
thing, then they submit. Man, there's a wisdom in other people's eyes, especially people
Mm.
who have done it before. So I
Yeah.
sent it to so many eyes, and they will tell me this motion has a problem. Fix this, fix that, do this, do that, do this, do that. And in the end, I sent my application, and man, I got in, and it was such a very, very huge moment for me because it's the first East African ever to ever be at that level. Had there been even a West African really? I don't know.
There's not. It's
There's
mostly
no
been Southern
South.
African, and
Exactly.
even with that, like you can just count the number of people who have been on that level on your fingers, and I think it was also after your appointment, that's when everyone was now like, because now people had seen previously people like Buemo, in as much as they were great,
Mm,
like we came to meet Buemo in the space and he was already big. Charity was
yeah,
already big. Like
yeah.
so, it was your appointment. It put a certain spotlight. I don't know if it was because it was also returning in person. Now people were like, okay, I can actually like apply and do this. Like
Great.
now I can see the steps and I want to get into it. And I think it really did a lot in terms of changing the circuit. Where
Yeah.
I now want to focus this conversation is now sitting on, you've sat at some of the highest versions of um,
Yeah.
debating on a
Yeah.
global stage. And
Yeah.
I would presume, and I assume that is the case, that you have been the securer of African interests. Like if they have questions about the African community,
Yeah.
they are obviously asking you, trying to highlight
They do.
some of these things and trying to address some of these things. This
Yeah.
question is then in two parts. How have you seen African progression, especially within a period after lockdown to this point on the global stage? And what do you think is still lacking that we need to continually work on in order to get apart? Because we saw the Asian circuit take advantage of this period to really pop up there. And I don't know if your determination is that Africa has moved forward this time or has gone back. Obviously, we've achieved some very, very good feats. So,
Yeah.
what will be your perspective on the journey so far?
So there are two areas I can comment on just based on knowledge because I've sat at different positions. One at an equity level, secondly at a cap level, thirdly is at an advisory level. At an equity level, I think we, and this is not credit to us, I think we are more visible mostly because of many generations of work. But ideally, I think what happened in Cape Town Worlds shifted a lot of people's minds about how they view the African continent. I think people are a bit more conscious and they're a bit more intentional to avoid biases. So you
Mm.
find that it's not perfect, but there's a gradual shift in an intentional effort to make the space a bit more safe. Although it's not perfectly safe, just make it
Yeah.
a bit more safe for Africans. So at an equity level, there's more intentionality with that. And you notice these days, every equity team must have representation both at a
Yes.
what at a level of equity and equity appeals, just to make sure that there's that representation. And I was equity for two WDCs. And I can tell you this for
Hmm.
free, man. Africans go through a lot. Like you should see some of the DMs you get after rounds about what is going on. And I think one of the things I'm not a very, I think people have different personalities. Like Comrade Umar is very out there about what is
Yeah.
going on and make noise. I like to work in the background. So what I would do is I remember I would get comments about different things that are going on. And I would just go to the cap and be like, my friends, this is going on. This is a problem. We need to fix it like this. And they would implement it without too much noise. And as I think the two worlds I was equity, we saw some reform, not too much, but we listened to
Mhm.
what people were saying and we would make sure that those things. I don't think some of you know, like some judges were even like put on like ESL blacklists, like due to the complaints they were
Mm.
sending to us, and we would silently deal with it in the background because we felt like it was important to ensure the stability of the tournament. Sometimes when you bring emotions too high with public announcements, what,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
causes too much tension. So equity, I saw that. In terms of cap reform, cap doesn't do too many things other than one, administration, and two, pick teams. So cap is responsible for picking equity, picking language, picking the different groups of teams. And the one thing I think that you've also seen is that there are more Africans in these teams, whether it's language
Yes.
team, even public speaking teams. All these teams, you're beginning to see more and more Africans enter those spaces. So from a cap reform, I think that's working. Although I think, and I'll talk about this later, we can do more as Africans to even get more seats on cap because we are always happy to have two Asians, two Europeans, but why must
Yeah.
we always have one token African?
Yeah.
I think I know the problem, but I'll talk about that later. The other thing I think that has changed a lot throughout COVID and the online era is Africa is more visible. And a lot of this is because of people like you, Andrews, and the people like me, Davida, all the people who participated in the online revolution and embraced it very well, went to compete in these spaces which were dominated by them, and went and did a good job. Like we went there, we saw, we didn't conquer like 100%, but we definitely left a mark. So
Yes.
I think we are more visible. We are more, they are more loud. They hear us a bit more. And I think there's a bit more of a shift towards also wanting to hear what the African delegations have to say about
Mm.
specific problems. So visibility and validation has come a bit more, although I don't think we are at 100%. So having been there, I think there's some increments that have happened, but of course there are some things that have not gone according to
Yes.
plan or have been better. So I think we had a lot of structural barriers financially, and this kills Africans. We have so many good teams, but many of them can't compete at that level because of financial problems. Of course, we
Yes.
can try with scholarships. And here's the problem, guys. Like scholarships, like every African is like, no, we can do more, we can do more. Yes, we can. And I agree that world should be trying a bit more. But these things can only help very few people. Like the
Yeah.
structural reform has to be at home. It can't be a top-down method where
Mm-hmm.
WDC is trying to fix the entire African structure. Even if we charged every European, every Asian, every American a $50 African tax, like you must each pay $50 extra reg fees to bring African teams here. At best, that helps 10, 15 teams. It will not change the problems that we have back at home, which is we
Mm.
need to find ways to create sustainable institutions and sustainable unions that can
Mm-hmm.
be able to raise funding internally and externally to compete at this level. Because
Mm-hmm.
as I maybe think is that the main problem facing Africans right now is a lack of critical mass to influence policies. So
Yeah.
even in the cap problem I'm raising to you, the reason why Asia these days can easily get 2 seats on cap easily, this was never the case before, is because many Asian institutions have been going to worlds. There has been an intentional effort to even bring worlds to Asia to make it more accessible to them. And
Mm.
therefore, more and more countries participating is giving them critical mass in terms of participants, votes on council, which is allowing them to influence the way debate is viewed, which is
Mm-hmm.
why they get more people in there, they get more judges in there, they get to host it several times, access growth, and it's creating that change there. Of course, a lot of things have happened in the background, which we're not talking
Yeah.
about. But at a competition level, it's impossible to fix the problems that we are facing at that highest level
Mm-hmm.
without building a critical mass of people who enter these spaces and are able to influence. So, right now, even if I make noise, there are very few voices that can move the entire world on African issues. And even if we wanted to move them, you see, you must also pick your battles. You see, I think,
Yes.
and maybe this sounds wrong, but sometimes people expect a lot from those at the top, and they have every right to. But we must also pick our battles strategically. We can't fight everything all at once. We will either
Mm-hmm.
wear out or it becomes like wolf, like just every
Yes.
time. You must pick your battles strategically, and we must fight them, all of us together, with a connected effort on that particular issue. I think we fought this on representation, and I genuinely think WDC is doing more to be representative, although the
Yes.
structural barriers fail us. Vietnam is happening. How many African judges are going? I don't know. I don't think
I'm
it's
not sure.
because they don't want to go, but money. The flight to Vietnam is like $1,500.
Yeah.
Even if you an $800 subsidy, for an African to get $600, $700 is
It's
still a lot of
impossible.
money. It's
Yeah.
still a lot of money. But if you look at the amount of money they are giving Africans from their IA budgets, from their scholarship budgets, it's huge. I have looked
Yeah.
at those numbers. They are increasing. And I think people are fighting for more and more and more, and it's working. But if we don't fix the structural problems at home, even if they gave us a $20,000 IA African budget, if you can't raise that 500, that 600, that extra 300 that you
Yeah.
must, we're never going to build that critical mass. So I feel like we need to focus ourselves on fixing the problems first on our
Mm-hmm.
continent, and that will allow us then to create the solutions that will allow us to then even go and dominate the global space.
Mm.
I'm sorry for so
Yeah.
long, but I'm so passionate about this issue.
No. It sounds very structured, and even for myself, I'm learning a lot from it because these are the spaces in which we are in. I think when you speak about progress within circuits, what we need are thought leaders, You
Yeah.
always need that. Like within every space, in order to progress, you need thought leaders. We need people who are putting out the ideas, who are giving knowledge, who are telling us, guys, this is what is happening, and then
Yeah.
getting things to move. It is from that basis that we begin to see any movements, because movement without direction is like futile.
Exactly.
So I really,
We
really,
need direction.
exactly, I really, really relate with the things that you say, and I think it's very, very important. I think this is the beginning. We'll have some conversation around like some of these structures in Africa and how necessarily
Yeah.
we can improve it. But
Yeah.
do you see, because like when I'm speaking with you and we're viewing African success, it goes beyond
Mm.
just winning worlds, because people think that's the most important thing. So people are like, yeah, Erasmus, like go and speak at worlds because we know you think you can
No.
win it and things like. Yeah, we believe we can and we want to make that effort, but we know that's so not what's going to end the problems. The issues are on a multi-layered
Much
level.
bigger scale. It's
Yeah,
structural.
exactly, and we need to be able to deal with it. So
Yep.
now let's talk about like the potential within Africa that remains untapped because of some of these barriers which are causing it. And this is where we move into. And I knew this conversation with you was going to be interesting. We probably will be the
Mm.
first speaker. We might have to do a part three, but once we have you here, let's
Let's do
clear these
part
things up. Let's clear them
yes,
up. Okay,
definitely.
cool. So a couple of years back, or a year or two ago, there was
Mm.
some drama happening on the continent,
Mm.
with regards to what we want to call PAUDC Council, which is the council in
Ah,
charge of, I don't know what exactly they do, to be very honest, but in charge of being able to handle PAUDC and stuff like
uh,
that. I
uh,
want to start from here, and I just want to give you this shot to just like have a go at it, speak to it,
mm.
because it started with you, and I don't know which sequence of events it is. It started with you being on the flyer for, um,
Togo.
or a bid for Togo
Eh,
PADC. Then all of a
yes.
sudden you are deleted from the bid. Then we see another bid, and then there is a back and forth, and then there is a huge fight with council. There are
Yeah.
several meetings, of which because I
Yeah.
was CA for Botswana, I got
You
dragged into.
ex-
And anyone who knows me knows I don't like politics. I hate it. I suck at it. And
Mm.
I was just like watching you guys have a go at each other, and I was like kissing my teeth and saying, why, what is going on here? Why are we exactly at this place? Can
Why are
you
we
talk us
fighting?
through the
The
process
se-
and the sequence of events and make a diagnosis of what exactly was going wrong and what is still going wrong? And that will sort of serve as a segue into addressing some of the structural issues that we're talking about in terms of
yeah.
Africa.
So I remember those times very, very well because
Yes.
I think that was a moment I'm not usually one to start fights. And when I do, I make them very loud. So what ended up happening was after PAUDC, and look, the like you have to understand the pathogenesis of this problem,
Yeah.
which is just council incompetence in general, like in
Mm-hmm.
general, which is basically that. And it's not a council problem. I think it's an African problem where we've ignored what this body is supposed to do. And we don't care because council is a group that meets after the finals. Do you remember in Akofena? We met in a bus. Do you know council
Yeah.
sat in a bus, inside a bus, with
Imagine.
12 people somehow to decide the fate of the entire African continent's next bid and everything. So it was just a complete incompetence from the beginning. So what happened was this. It started with the Botswana bid. I mean, the Botswana tournament. You remember very well, Botswana was supposed to happen physically.
Yeah.
Then they converted it to online. Was it a month too? Or around there? I don't
Yeah.
remember very well. But it was very close to the event. So what
Yes.
ended up happening was everyone who was planning to go to Botswana is no longer going. And I remember there was a lot of drama at council because some of us decided to go to Zanzibar. And I think one of the CAs for Botswana was in Zanzibar. And they were being called to council to answer questions. And I remember we were taking that council call on the streets of Dar es Salaam at a food joint. We are listening to the Botswana thing, and we don't even know what's going on anyway. So that's where the problem started, because at Botswana they approved a bid for, I think, was it 2020? I don't remember. Was it like 2023? Because Botswana was supposed
Yeah,
to be 2021. So
yeah,
they were
Botswana was supposed
approving
to be
for
2021.
2023. But
No,
I
Botswana was
remember
supposed
what,
to be 2020. Is it
then
like
they
when the
stopped.
year was supposed? Yes,
Yeah. Then they gave it to
yeah.
Kampala.
They gave it to Kampala, yeah, and it was
Then they
supposed to be
decided to do the
2021.
following year, which
Yes,
is 2021,
one. Yes,
which is now obviously, PUDC does 2 years in advance. So
yes,
PUDC is usually given 2 years in advance. So I remember I was in that council meeting and they approved a bid, and I was there and I was like, oh, okay, this is the bid that came. A few days after that, or was it a day after that, another group raises an issue and says, well, because of the abrupt nature of the way these things happened, we were not informed that there was a bidding process. Like anyone who is interested in bidding to bid, because remember, everything was happening online. There was no
yeah,
council reception. Like right now, if you're in WDC Council, WDC Council has the database of everybody who is a member of that council. And whenever there's a meeting, a vote, a bid, they send out an email to everyone and say,
yeah,
the bidding process is open from this day to this day. Everyone submit your bids here. So in PUDC, it was more like, like a village meeting. Oh, you come, you come, you come, you come. And then now let's create a bid and let's do it. And what ended up happening is, while the council sat, these guys had a valid claim. And I thought their claim was valid, which was nobody opened up the bidding process. So we just decided on a bid. And they were like, no, that's not procedural. Procedure or fair practice is you inform people, you give them time to submit bids, and then they do this. Now, you at that point, I was on the Togo bid, and I remember Latif had reached out to me. Oh, do you want to be a member of this bid? And I was in Zanzibar. I remember we were having a
yeah,
nice debate. You've been to Zanzibar before, so
yeah, bro.
English
Like, yeah,
is a very chilled, nice
yeah,
environment. You're not
no
even thinking
stress.
about other things. I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, no problem. I'm okay with Togo. Because I remember Latif, because in when I won my bid in Akofana, Latif had bid. And I
Yeah,
think he was
he lost.
convinced by someone, I won't mention names, that don't bid now, bid the next year or the next one. You will go
Yeah,
after Kenya. So he felt like he was legitimately owed the
due.
right
Yeah,
to due to bid, and fair chances to him. Whoever promised him had promised him that, we will vote for you. Now, the problem came when I was coming back from Zanzibar. I started evaluating. This was even before this council meeting and everything.
yeah,
I decided, having evaluated the whole situation, that this is not a bid I want to be part of. And my reasons were many. Number one, I knew at that point I didn't want to be so involved in a bid, because I was bidding at that point, not bidding. I was actually convening PAUDC, and I was also being WDC CA. So at that
yeah,
point, I was like, bro, I don't think I'll have too much time to be part of this. Two,
yeah,
I foresaw a lot of politics coming from this thing, because having dealt with these individuals before, I mean, they are rowdy people. So I felt that associating myself, and I don't want to mention names, but you know who I'm
no,
associating myself
it's
with people means drama. I knew it meant drama. So I was like, hey, on a personal
I've
note, I've dealt with
Masha,
these people before and they've pissed me off. So I'm not
yeah,
going to deal with them again.
they, Masha, our audience needs to know because thankfully our audience is quite diverse, even
Yeah,
beyond
yeah.
Africa. So we need to know the names so that we
At
sort
that
of
point, I had an issue with Eze. Like Eze
yes,
I had dealt with him before once when I convened a tournament. And I remember after the tournament, his kids, it was a high school tournament, it was online, his kids lost, and I think he was angry about it and he came to complain to us. And I don't think we responded to it the way he wanted. He started threatening me, telling
mm,
me how I don't know he can shut me down, how he can end this tournament,
wow,
how we don't know who he is. Man, I still have those audios on my phone until today, bro. It's like the guy literally waved a wand of, I think he was censored in some. I don't remember the beef. He had some beef with Eric Kazadi from SA, who was a CAP
Mm.
member. Eric spoke to him badly. He was not happy about that. He spoke bad, and then we ended up shutting him down in a way like, guys, stop this. I don't remember what we told him, but eventually the
Yeah.
whole thing was not in his favor. Then he
Yes.
came to us, man. He threatened us to kingdom come, and I was like, so these are the people I'm going to be dealing with. I was like, nah, bruh, I'm not going to do this. And I felt bad because I was like, I should have probably said no in the beginning.
Yes.
So after a while, I think I also had an issue with the convener. I've dealt with people, and man, like, I don't know why. Something was just
So
off.
many
I still don't know.
characters.
In a week or two, Erasmus, I hope you air this after. Like, we will know if I was right or wrong. Like, we will actually know if my instincts were right or wrong. But something was off about the guy. Like, there is a problem. And I had dealt with characters. So I'm not saying they are bad people. I'm just saying they are
Yeah.
of a different flavor. They are just not my taste. And I was like,
Yes.
one thing about these things is that you have to have a team that wants to work together, is willing to work
Mhm.
together. And I was like, bruh, I sent a long email. I sent a long text to Eze. I was like, bruh, I don't think I can do this. One, I'm going to be very busy. Two, I don't even remember. I should probably trace my messages to Eze and I'll probably find there. It had a lot of
Content.
I think content on why this is not going to happen. So anyway, I'll probably find it. So after that, I left, and then this Lagos thing starts. Now here's the
Wow.
problem. While I had already left a long time before this. I even knew about the Lagos problem. Like,
Yeah.
by the time I resigned, I didn't know there was another Lagos bid. I had no
Yes.
idea. In fact, they reached out to me like 2 days or 3 days after I had resigned. And I don't think they knew I had resigned. I don't even think
Mhm.
they did. They were like, bro, do you want to see this thing? And do you want to be a part of our bid? Do you know they actually asked me to see it? Victor,
Wow.
he said, can you be my CA? I was
Wow.
like, bro, no, no, I don't want to be the CEO of the competition. And my reasons still stand. I had principled grounds for leaving, and I was
Yeah.
not going to like leave a Togo bid to go see a Lego. That just looks
Yeah.
like I'm a horrible human being. So I decided
Mm.
I'm not going to see it. But what happened is now when I'm fighting for the rights of people to have an open and fair bidding process, how does it look? Macharia left the Togo bid. Then all of a sudden, he's fighting for a reopening of the bids. I must have a vested interest in the bid by Nigeria. And I was
Nigeria.
like, you guys knew, like, I didn't want to talk about it at the point. These guys had asked me to be one of their CAs, and I had said no. They had asked me
Yeah.
to recommend someone. I said, okay, go talk to these people. Funny enough, one of the other CAs of the Togo bid was on both bids. So clearly there was a problem somewhere. And it's not their fault. I actually would have done the same exact thing, which is you're not sure how it's gonna go. Just hedge your bets either way.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're just here to help the continent. You're not part of the drama. So the other one now, the other CEO of Togo is fighting everyone to kingdom. Come, Eze, that is. So this is how this drama just starts. And while we are fighting for the rights of people to to what is it called to be have an open bidding, we have a huge fight on council. And this is why I say the council is broken. Like, it became personality politics. You raise points, it becomes personal. Like, you're supporting the other side. That's why you are fighting like this. Well,
Yeah.
might be true, maybe. I didn't even end up like, this thing didn't even end up going too far. But it was like, you're not interrogating the issues that are being raised. You're
Yeah.
interrogating the personalities that are bringing the issue. You should have
Mm.
been in those meetings, Erasmus. You're on a Discord server having a meeting. Everyone is shouting. Council chair decides, no, this meeting is not going my way. He's now dictating what everybody can do. He switches off the server and creates a new one. And so you're like,
I know council reps were chosen like overnight. Like we'll be there, then you'd
overnight,
hear there is a council meeting
new
happening,
one.
and you're like, okay, who is
Yeah.
representing Ghana? We don't know the person. so,
Or they
so,
change,
yeah, yeah.
depending on who is supporting who.
Who is supporting who?
Man.
It was a crazy time, and I
Then the
feel
whole
this is
thing blows up. You remember the East African boycott when
Yes.
we opened the East African boycott? Because what happened is they called a vote, and then we wanted East African countries to vote, and then they were like, no, only countries that participated in PAUDC 2021 can vote. And we're like, what? Like, where did that rule come from? Like, as long as council members are present in council, they should be allowed to
Mm,
vote. This is a Pan African committee. But they were like,
yeah.
no, the rules say that only countries that have participated in that year. But we're telling them, remember, I've been to PADC since 2016. It's not
Yeah.
like I'm new. I know countries that sometimes are not present, sometimes can send proxy votes to other countries to vote for them
Exactly.
for as long as they have been an active participant of PAUDC
PAUDC.
before. Just because you miss one session doesn't mean you completely lose voting rights.
Yeah.
Man, we were fought. We were fought because they were thinking we are trying to stuff the vote so that we vote
Yes.
a certain way. And then we're like, okay, if that's what the case is, because they were trying to remove about 3 East African countries from voting, we said, okay, you
Mhm.
have your vote then. Africa will not participate in this vote until every country is recognized as a voting member. Man, those were dramatic
And to
times.
be clear, that's the vote that went through to legitimize the bid, right?
Yes, and eventually East Africans were allowed to vote. And then for some reason, I don't even know. To be fair, I wasn't even in like close contact with those Lagos people too much. I mean, they would text me to ask me questions, but it's not like I was like a mobilizer for them. My issues were much bigger than whether
Yeah.
Lagos or Togo win. My issues were,
Yeah.
how is the bidding process working? Who decides what which bid goes through? When do we how do we do that process? Two, how do we standardize bids? Because some of the things in the Togo bid were actually quite questionable. Like there was a
Mm,
bit unclear on accommodation. Is it hotel? Is it hostels? Unclear.
mm.
Reg fees unclear. There was no letter of support from the university. How sure are you this thing is going? And remember, and don't get me wrong, this is after PAUDC 2017. Remember, we talked about
Yes.
Cameroon.
Yes,
We talked
exactly.
about Cameroon. So some of us have experienced firsthand what happens when things are left to chance. So we are
Yes.
fighting for things, and then people are like, personalities. Anyway, I don't blame them. I maybe didn't foster myself too well, and maybe I was a bit political. I don't mind. But the questions we were raising were important then. And to be fair, I don't know whether history will tell the truth. In 2 weeks, we will know.
Yes.
2 weeks,
No,
we will
is
know.
this for me, is this the same? Because for my problem was like the legitimacy of the council, because like we just didn't know what was going on, and as far as I know, there were council elections and there are rules over like the terms of office that a council head is supposed to even have in the first place. So like I remember there were people now saying, wait, is this guy even supposed to lead council? Is this person who is representing even supposed to represent? Like, what's going on? And I get what maybe the feeling is from there. It's like, you guys have never cared. Why do you why do you
Care
care
now because
again
they're
now?
raising a
So
fuss.
yeah, so I get how it feels like. But I also knew there was an issue surrounding like the council chair just like being voted for like
Exactly.
3 times or so.
Council chair had been there for 3 years. More importantly, they were the CA of the bid that was being fought. So they had a vested interest in
Yes.
one outcome over another, which means, and I think everybody who was there can attest, Eze was not partial. He was not
Yes.
impartial. He was very partial on those issues. And he was
Yes.
very, very, in fact, the council meetings were like, it felt like, a law, a moot court. So every
Yes.
time somebody says something, a council chair is just supposed to be moderating a meeting. He starts a rebuttal. You're the council chair. You're not there to advocate. You're supposed to be managing the discussion. So he was so impartial. What that did is that it made us even more aggressive towards him, which made
Yes.
him even more aggressive towards us, which then
Yeah.
caused the whole thing to become so political that nobody was seeing the truth or the issues. It just became personality politics.
Oh God. I just what do you think reform is going to look like, especially for the council? I look at councils of old, and even then we had like big personalities, right? We're still able to
Mm,
manage our relationships in the face of all the
mm.
lobbying and things that was going on, but we're able to see things getting done. But what for you would look like a revival of PAUDC, of council, of what the leadership structure looks like moving forward?
I won't speak about PAUDC. Let me speak about council because that's the question I think you raised. The first
Yes.
thing that needs to, I wanted to do it, but I figured that maybe this is a fight for younger people. The constitution must be fixed. The constitution of PAUDC is defunct. It doesn't
Mm,
even say anything deals with the core issues that are coming. I think it was written at a time where there was not much query on too many things, you know.
yeah.
Right now, I think the entire PADC constitution must be rewritten from start to front. That thing is
Mhm.
a 10, it's a 10 page, is it even 10 pages? It's like 10 articles. I don't know. A very short thing that covers very few areas. I've studied and I've been in those positions. I've read the world's constitution, the EUDC constitution, the Asian's constitution. Those people know what they're doing and they have
Yes.
actually put up structures and people follow those structures that are set up. So there must be a heavy investment in rewriting the constitution to
Yeah.
suit the times we exist and to cover all possibilities about the competition so that you don't have rogue people decide. Because, you know, at one point, the chair was now the interpreter of like the constitution. Like constitutional interpretations were now at the mercy of the chair. And if the chair does it, we had a legal advisor who had maybe attended only one PAUDC. So there was no institutional knowledge of this constitution. And that was the
Yeah.
problem with the African constitution. A lot of it is practice, not written. So things have
Yes.
happened before in a certain way that has guided how council operates, but it's not written. So it's about who knows, who was there, who was not there. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of drama around the constitution, and that's the first area of fixing. The second thing is that people must start taking council a bit more seriously. You know, in worlds, like there's a whole day fast for pre-council, and then there's a time for council, and all those times, nothing else is going on. In
Mm.
PAUDC, pre-council is a meeting of 5 people somehow when socials are going on and everyone else is doing other things. And then council happens after finals when nobody cares about anything else. Like tournament
Yeah.
is over, nobody cares. So very few people have attended council since 2016. People don't care much about what happens in those council meetings. And that's where
Mm.
most of the important decisions are made. So there must be an active investment in tournaments to spotlight council and to bring people to council to deal with the issues that need to be dealt with. Because we have a vague constitution, people don't care about what's going on, but when the repercussions of the choices they make happen, they want to complain. Yet
Yeah,
you are not
exactly.
even part of it. So that's the second thing. Three, we must invest in understanding the knowledge of council. I think our council has been led for a few years now by people who maybe are not as committed to the cause. I feel like
Mm.
PAUDC just needs one revolutionary, you know, just one guy who sits down and is like, man, I'm gonna change this thing. And he does
Yes.
the constitution, he does most of these things. For the past 6 years, I don't even know who has. And it's what you're saying. Council used to be led by people with authority, people with
Yes.
knowledge, people listened to. Like it was a position of authority in African debating for
Yeah,
the
exactly.
elders to guide people on what the best practice is. At some point, it became a show about, I don't know, let me not go too much into that. We go back to our roots, which even sometimes motivates me. I'm like, should I just go and like take this thing, work with it for 1 year, like 3 things, and then leave it to people? Because so far the people who have been there have not been invested in fixing the problems that are there. We have
Yeah.
so many vague guidelines that say nothing. We have zero accountability on people and bids. We have so many problems that somebody just needs to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to do this for 1 year and we're going to have to fix ABC, not too many, just 3 things. And then after that, do that. So I think there's a lot of problems in that place. And I think we will feel the consequences after a while. And I hope people have that eureka moment. I think sometimes it takes suffering. You know, in constitutional writing,
Yeah.
they say constitutions are written in periods of bloodshed. So
Yeah.
I think we will
Maybe
need
we
a
need some
period of
blushes.
suffering, and then people will be like, never again.
But I want to ask this question because like it's a
Yeah,
discussion that I've been having more recently. Do you
yeah,
think there is a leadership crisis within
a big one,
debating in
a
Africa?
big one. A big one. It's never been. I don't think it's even been this big for very long. It's. and you just have to study the way the dynamics are working.
Mm.
There was a time, and maybe for those of us who are old enough, debate had elders. It had
Ha
elders. There
ha
were
ha.
leaders.
Tell
Debate had
me,
elders. Ah, my guy. There were people who were leaders. There were elders in the
bruh,
community, and
bruh.
they led, and they led.
Oh no.
Even if they were volatile, even if they were sometimes crazy, they were
Yes,
leaders. And those
yes,
leaders had opposition leaders. And it was a period of leadership.
yes,
These days, it's what you're saying. We have no thought leaders. It's I don't even know who is guiding thought in. I mean, and to be fair, let's be honest, Erasmus, it is our fault. Let's be
yes.
honest. It's my fault,
To a
it's
huge
your
degree.
fault, because the people who led us, we have decided to not lead the community. I think me and you are more comfortable getting our personal wins, maybe helping the small communities we can,
Yes,
but we haven't risen up to say, let's take the whole community and take it up. Which is why sometimes I respect people like Umar who did things to try and like unite the whole continent, things
mm,
like Uhuru Worlds, or provide thought leadership on different problems. Like
mm,
there was a time this continent had leaders, and they might have
bruh.
not been the best, but they led. And those were
Yes,
times of you had people who could guide you on, this is what we used to do, this is why we do what we do. And if you want to change it, these are the principles you must still stick to.
stick to.
So those thought leaders have gone. I don't know where, like, it's our fault. I think my generation, your generation, we
Yeah,
failed to take up that mantle. I think, look at Sadiq and what happened, man. Those guys,
yeah,
like,
bruh.
from being the largest debate thought leader, participation leader, to being almost the smallest circuit in Africa now,
Yeah,
almost.
it is now.
Literally. So it was a failure of leadership from the people at the top
Mm.
all the way to the bottom. East Africa has tried. We've come up, but
Yes,
we are almost at a crisis, because sometimes we ask ourselves, if one, two, three people are not here, how will the circuit sustain?
exactly.
West Africa has at least fixed this problem. And this is what I was saying the other day. I respect West Africans a lot, because you have had what is known, the intergenerational connection still exists, where knowledge is
Mm.
still passed from very old generations. I mean, I went to debate Accra Open 2021. I'm debating with Derek Aka, I'm debating
Yes,
with Karim, I'm debating
Karim,
with
yeah, no,
BNI,
Jessica.
debating with you, Jessica, I mean, Tayo, not Tayo, what is
Yeah,
Telfa, people
yes,
who are there in 2013, 2014, and they're still there now, providing
yes.
leadership. So the young kids, they are led, and then they will develop their own leaders. You can see a new crop of leaders coming up,
Mm.
and they are going to pass that knowledge to, and they
Yeah.
still come. The guys, Eric, all these people are still active, and they are still participating and all that. So Africa needs that moment of leaders of thought maintaining a form of control, or just trying to fix the system, because,
Mm.
man, like, things are, I don't think we are at a very good place. Having convened PAUDC, I can tell you that it was a huge issue, that what is just going on in this continent, it's a problem.
Okay, so we'll talk about convening PAGC very soon, but I just want to share quick thoughts on this because
Mm.
recently, more often than not, I and I know it's one of the reasons why we still stayed, right? Because Mashaya, you'd admit to this. A lot of our mates have also left the space because people need
Yeah.
to think about themselves. You need to think about your career, personally, where you're going. People, you need
Yeah.
to think about family because the older you get, what your priorities do change. So we find people
Yeah.
moving on. So it's very, very difficult. And I say for us, there wasn't sort of like a clear handover. It was always like your name says, like you have been doing, you searching for information, you asking how is this being done, you having side by side. Like when we go to tournaments and we see Dominic, you get him a beer and sit by him, and you are just sort of like gisting and discussing some of these stuff. Like
Yeah.
I did it. I
Yeah.
did the same. We served. We served. There were times where you are there with these guys and you sort of like have to prepare to like get them to socials or things like that. We're not saying people should do the same thing. Like maybe I don't need it, but people need to show the commitment and sacrifice. People need to show the willingness to learn. These days,
Mm.
um, even for like West Africa, where you say there's been some sort of progress, I still see the same problem. People take decisions without, and I mean, it's fine, it's your time to lead. People take decisions
Yeah.
without consulting other people, finding out what the opinion of people who have led before is. People actually feel threatened by past leaders having an opinion on one thing or another, pointing out to, like,
Mm.
for example, why can't IAs come to PAUDC and judge? Why can't you pay for some of these old debaters to come in there and judge? Because that's what the PAUDC does. That's all. People are
Yeah.
just going to point out to institutional bias, regional bias,
Mm.
things like that. And we feel like the older guys are taking our space. So we need to push them out because we are good enough to control our own space. And before you realize, you are running a failing franchise. I think we
Exactly.
we need to have more of these conversations. People need to learn
Exactly.
from the specific examples and see how some of these things are done. But let me move to the
Can I give you
question
an
now.
example?
Yes,
Just
go
one
ahead.
before we move to the
That's
next question. I was talking to these things you learn just by talking to your elders. I was talking to Dominic and Jamie the other day in Tanzania. So Jamie had come and we were having conversations. And Dominic and Jamie were talking about something that just shocked my life. You know what they were saying? They were saying that around 2010, 2011, I don't know when, but in the early
mhm.
20s, Southern African Debating Championship, their regional championship, had somehow convinced a whole bank in the
Wow.
region, to fund the Southern African Debate Championships every year to the tune of, and I'm actually like downplaying it, over $70,000 per year. So
Wow.
imagine every year they had a deal for almost 2, 3 years that you will get a certain amount of money from our bank in exchange of
Wow.
certain things they would do for the bank. Who knew such a thing could ever happen?
No.
And you know, those guys fumbled that deal. Can you imagine
Oh
if
no.
they fumbled that deal? I don't know what they did, but the people who did it, I think people became very hysterical. Accountability, what?
Yes.
People made a lot of noise, and then there was a leadership change. And the people who came in after that, man, they fumbled it, and the bank pulled funding. I was being given stories of a debate organization that was given, like, I think over 100,000 US to run debate programs, to develop,
Mm.
crazy stories of people who did crazy things, like to like build debate, and then something happens, that knowledge is lost, we lose those connections,
Yes.
those deals, and those people. So I mean, the Southern African region, those are just two examples of some major fumbles that we know about. Now, imagine if those guys were still in the space, just not doing anything, advising, just
Yes.
advising, like, what's going on? How do we rebuild this? How did we do it? How did we? And those were the days, like, you would hear like SA and UDC used to have massive participation. Right
Yes.
now, I think when it came closer to 2019, it was almost non-existent. So
Yeah.
those are just stories I got from listening to these people. And the lessons from those stories was not that people made a lot of money or people used to get a lot
Yeah.
of money. It was people fumbled
Yeah.
opportunities that were life changing. And this is just from listening to Jamie and Dominic talk about past history. I remember, and that's why personally, if you follow what I do a lot, I like to sit with people who are older, people who have done
Yeah.
it before. I like to hear, what did you guys do? Like, one of my best people to talk to is Eric. I like to talk to people who have been in the space for a while, because
Yes.
there's wisdom in that age. You don't see
Yeah.
it, but sometimes there's wisdom in that age. And that's just a good African example of how just failure to pass knowledge, failure to, just create structure that is sustainable and creating that pipeline has failed Africans, and we have fumbled major, major things.
Uh, it's really really sad because the sad thing is that there are more of these stories which are even like uncovered, and these are things which are which we are facing the effect of even till now.
Yeah.
It's really really crazy. Uh, Fast forward, you were able to convene a PAUDC. We,
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a mixed bag. It was a
Yeah.
mixed bag for you in terms of the experience, in terms of your expectation, and in terms of the outcome. Can you
Yeah.
be able to point out to some of the major highlights and what this
Good or
particular
bad.
experience for you exposed. Yes. I mean,
Good or bad.
for me, I think you should give some good, and for me, you should give some bad. But what did it expose for you?
So let me start with the good. I think
Of course.
we were in a very challenging position because this was the first ever physical PAUDC post COVID. So, as
Yes.
you noted in the discussion, we had lost so many contacts. Many unions had died off. Many new groups had come up. You didn't even know who. You know, there was a time in 2018, I could pinpoint for you everyone who was in charge of every union in Africa because it had
Yes.
been going on for a while. Like, even the unions were used to it, the institutions were used to it, funding for PADC existed. Like, it was something that was there. By Akofena, it was big, like there
Yeah.
was a consistency to even the participation. Now, everything had been like broken. Like, the whole system had been shaken. You didn't know who was what, you didn't know who was who, you didn't know which unions you can rely on, which ones you can't, those type of things. And I think the one good thing we did, despite the challenges, we did manage to get a substantial amount of people because I think we had
Mm.
64 teams. And I think that's
Yeah.
not a big number, but it's bigger than even like what had happened in
Most places.
2017.
Yes.
Yeah, it was quite big. So I was like, okay, we did manage to mobilize quite a continental, because we had about 14 countries, which is quite a lot for the first time ever post COVID. So I thought that was a good thing. Like, we jump started the system. We took a lot of, they say the first one through the door always takes the bullet. That was us. Like,
Yes.
we went through the door for everybody else. So we crawled so that somebody else will walk and somebody else will walk so that another person can run. But the hardest job is on the one who crawls. So
Yes.
we are the ones who crawled through, rebuilt some form of database, rebuilt some form of institutional memory, and some way. That was good. Two, I kid you not. Like, you can take this to the bank. I think we offered them the most high quality service PAUDC has ever offered in the years.
Mm.
I say this like with a lot of confidence. In terms of quality, like the hotels they were staying in, the
Mm-hmm.
food they were eating, the socials that we took them for, it was high quality stuff. I mean,
Mm.
of course, West Africans will complain about food because it's not chili, but it was still good food. Like, it was still very good food. It's not hot, but it's food.
Yeah,
So I think we offered a very high quality service. In as much as people can say a lot of things about the tournament, like, they can't
they
complain
can't
about
complain about
service
those
provided.
stuff. Yes.
Those things they cannot complain about. So I think that's the
Mm.
second thing we did very, very well in terms of quality. I don't even think Akofena, even TZ, I think we did better than both in terms of improving the quality of service. Although
Mhm.
there are things those other tournaments had better than us. I think in terms of, man, you should have seen the breakfast those guys were eating. It was like 5 courses, man. It was, man.
That's wild.
Yes, they enjoyed their life. And also, Strathmore is a very beautiful institution. So they were in
Yeah.
very good homes, air conditioned. Like, it was such a nice, like, vibey
Environment.
place. I don't think
Yeah.
one can complain about that. So that was the other good thing that I remember. And I think the other good thing I remember about the tournament is that we did a lot to invest in, like, the out of debate activities, the
Mm.
socials. They had the nganyas. They went on those
Oh.
public buses that are so cool. They went for very interesting socials in and around. So we did a lot to try and at least invest in that, which I think
Mm.
helped them a lot. So I think those are three very good things that happened about the tournament. Maybe I don't want to go into too much, not to
Mm.
just blow our own horn. But also, some things went very badly, and I know that's what you're more interested in. So,
It's good you know.
what are the things that went horribly wrong? So, and each of them has a justification. Am I allowed to defend myself, or this is just
No,
me saying what
no,
went wrong?
of course, we are looking at things always from your perspective, is your view and opinion. So you have the platform. You should.
So, the first thing that went wrong was an issue with CAP with regards to people coming. So we had two problems. The first problem was, and I think CAP, we only had like 3 CAP members on site, and I
Mm.
think 3 people didn't make it. And
Mm.
the two problems we faced, and the first one you know about it very well, was a great problem was that many of the people who are capped for our tournament were also planning to go to Madrid. So
Mm.
you and Umar and Andrews, you had
Yeah.
applied for, what is it called?
Visas.
For visa to go to Madrid. And to the extent that you had applied for visas, I think 2, 3 weeks before the PAUDC tournament, there was no way we could invest money in buying
Mm.
tickets when nobody has a passport. Because I've been
Yeah.
traveling for a very long time. So I understand how these things work. Sometimes visa processes tell you they'll take 10 days, they take 30. So
Yeah.
I remember I had mentioned to you guys, like, once you have your passports, tell us, we'll get you your tickets.
Yeah.
And truth be told, you didn't get your passport. So there
Yeah.
are people who had a justified case for, can't make it, passport, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there was some communications breakdown before, but ideally the main problem was on a vast majority of cases, many CAP members had applied for Madrid visas.
Yeah.
And by the time the tournament was starting, none of them had their passports.
Mhm.
Second problem, those who had their passports, I remember the Andrew situation was quite unique because he got applied for a visa, it got rejected. And so when it got rejected, he got his passport back. And we had managed to secure a flight sponsorship from Rwanda.
Mhm.
And I remember speaking to Rwanda and they were like, they wanted to give us the tickets after the tournament. And I was like, no, we need to bring people in now. And I remember talking to Andrews and I was like, bro, I have this ticket. Please send me your passport. And I remember hounding the country. You know, I ever hounded a country manager of an airline? That was me every day in his office. We need this ticket. And he finally approves and he reserves a seat for Andrews to fly into Nairobi a day. I think it was 8th or 9th, either the day of the
Mhm.
start or the second day. I remember we had
Mhm.
secured that ticket, had submitted everything. And then Boemo calls me, I think a day before the tournament. And he's like, bro, Andrew's not coming. I'm like, what do you mean? He just sent me his passport. Was it last night? It's like, no, he's told me he's not coming. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, apparently he needs to reapply for his
Yeah.
Madrid visa because the window is very short. He can't come and then go back and reapply. It means
Yeah.
he's likely going to miss the window. And I was fuming. I was
Wow.
like, do you know how many strings I have pulled to get the country manager to allow me to use this ticket now? Because remember, this is December. So
Yes.
airlines are selling their tickets at a premium. In fact, when they're giving you that one for free, they are losing business. At that point, that ticket was about a
Yeah.
thousand US. And they are giving it to you like take instead of selling it to someone else. So imagine my conversation having to go back there and tell them, look, we might not need to use this ticket because now it had other issues arising. So that was an issue with Cap coming, and I think there was also a problem with Davida. Like there was, and
Yeah.
I'm going to explain because this is where the drama started. Because then
Yes.
Cap started asking a very important question. Erasmus is not coming. Umar is not coming. Andrews is not coming. You should bring Davida. And it was a very legitimate claim because Davida
Yeah.
had been like almost shadow DCA. Although her ticket
Yeah.
was not assured, we were quite sure we would get her a ticket because the airline that we had booked, Rwandair or the sponsor, had promised us 5 tickets. They had
Mm.
promised us 5 tickets. And that day I'm going for Andrews's ticket on the 2 or 3 days before the competition. Like I've been pushing for this five, this five, this five, this five. I knew even you guys were covered. They tell us, actually, no, we can't give you 5 tickets. We can only give you two. And it was
Mm.
not two open tickets. They said 2 tickets from the following destinations: Kigali and Accra. Full stop.
Mm.
So, and this was so bad because by the time they were even telling us this, I had already paid for Boemo's ticket out of pocket. Like, so I couldn't
Yeah.
even use the Kigali
Yeah.
ticket. It's not
Exactly.
helping me that one. So now the Accra one, the idea was how do we get Davida to Accra and then fly back?
Yeah.
But remember, at this point, I can't do that because Andrews has already refused to come. I can't ask the country manager again. No, no, give it to this other person.
Yeah.
I'll even look like a fool to these people. So the drama came the following way. And I'm sorry to say this, but we were messed up seriously by a delegation from Zimbabwe. And people don't know this story. So it's good I can speak about it here. I don't even
Yeah.
think CAP understood what I was telling them because
No.
I think at that point the things were heightened. There was a delegation of Zimbabwe of about 68 participants from different colleges and tertiary institutions that had booked to come to PAUDC. Now, Zimbabwe has a foreign currency exchange problem, which means that many at times institutions cannot send money via bank transfers. You see the way Kenya still pays via banks. So
Yeah.
Zimbabwean institutions historically in PAUDC pay in cash. So they come with money to the tournament. So I had consulted before, and this is why I said I consult. I talked to
Yeah.
Dominic in 2018. He said, no, all Zim institutions come with money and they pay you in cash. He also told me, BNI told me the same exact thing from Akofena, that Zim institutions, they come with cash. So I was like,
Cash.
okay, fine. Means we have to offer these concessions for the Zim institutions. So we had been following up. Initially, there were like 20, but at the time of PAUDC almost happening, there were only 9 that were left. And all 9, I remember, the PAUDC was starting on 8th. On 7th and 6th and 5th, we are calling all of them and being like, are you coming? They're like, yes. In fact, we are booking tickets now. I'm like, okay. Please send us your tickets once they are ready. Once they're ready, I'm like, okay. 8th, are you coming? Yes. In fact, our tickets are booked for tomorrow. There is no flight from Harare on 8th. So we are going to be joining you on 9th. Now, here's the problem. Do that math. If 9 institutions are bringing an average of 6 people each, right? How many people are those? 6 or 7. So, because I'm
That's
imagining they are
54.
bringing like 2 teams, which is
Mm.
4, and then they bring like 1 judge, which is 5, and like usually Zim institutions come with like 2 administrators. So
Yeah.
there were about 7 each institution, and they are like 9. So it's about 63. Actually, our estimate was about 68 to 70 people were coming from Zim. Each of them is paying a reg fee of about 200 USD. So there was a liquidity that was coming from Zim.
Yes.
Now the
Exactly.
problem comes when on 8th we call and they say there's a flight on 9th, and all institutions are giving you the same story. So it must be true, because
True. Yes.
otherwise, like those who had managed to come early, they had already told us them they booked their flights like 4 weeks or
Go
3 weeks
ahead.
early. So those who are booking last minute, they were not able to get. And it's true, PAUDC, some people come a day, either on the day of
Even on
opening
the
ceremony,
day. Yeah.
morning of the day. So it's not a new thing. My guy, on 9th, 8th, they said they're coming tomorrow. On 9th, they
Yeah.
say, we are still coming, but at this time, I'm smelling the line. There's a problem. The problem is the Zim patrons who are already in Kenya are telling us they are also coming. So even they are re-emphasizing this message. So the problem comes when you look at this point of day one, when the tempers are high. CAP is saying we need these CAs to come. So get this person a ticket. Their ticket is about 2,700 USD. By the way, tickets from Nigeria are not cheap. It's like
Yeah.
$2,700. Then we were hit with the rudest shock of our lives. Do you know? Because I mean, we are sometimes competent, but I think this was a moment of incompetence from us. Because these people had told us they are coming and we didn't want them to have an accommodation crisis, what we had told the hotels is that these people are coming. So, what the hotels had done is that they had reserved rooms like for these people because they were coming. So, they were
Yeah.
coming. Now, when we come and it's 9th and they haven't come, and now even the hotel is wondering, these people are lying to us. They just want, we had filled one hotel, this other hotel was seeing the other one is full, but theirs is not full. So they thought we were playing them because we
Yeah.
had used tournament hotels. And they were like, no, you guys, you've cost us. Anyway, the owner of the hotel says the following: either you pay us the amount for these people's rooms for I don't know if it was 2 or 3 nights, or everyone who is sleeping in this hotel is kicked out.
Ah, God.
So pay the rooms for 70 people. So 70 people is about how many rooms? 35? Pay for
Yes.
35 rooms for 2 or 3 nights. I don't remember the exact amount of nights. Or everyone who is in this hotel, I think there were around 30 rooms that were occupied, about 60 people. I'm going to kick them out in the evening when they come. So CAP is fighting you, buy tickets. The hotels are saying we are going to kick people out if you don't pay for these, were they 30, 35 rooms. Now, each room at that point was about $50 per night. So now imagine paying for 35 rooms for 2 nights. That was
No, that's a
almost
lot.
3,500 USD. So what choice are you making? Are you buying a ticket? Remember, the Zim Reg, the 14K that is supposed to come and like offer surplus to the tournament, is not
It's no
coming
longer
anymore.
good.
The budget you have or the money you have in reserve. Remember, I had promised the CAP members, which was you and Umar, who are coming from the UK, we are going to hold some money for you in case you get your passports by
Past.
a certain time. We are going to buy the ticket. So we had a reserve of about a very small one, like 25 or $35 or something. It was a very small. Actually, I think it was around 2K or 25.
Yeah.
So what are you doing with that money? Are you buying a ticket or are you paying for the
No,
hotel?
obviously we
Are you
want to preserve the tournament.
kicked out or are you going to buy a ticket? So at this point we chose, and I think this was the convener's choice. I can take full responsibility for it. It was, we're not going to allow participants to be kicked out of rooms. We are here for a good tournament.
Yeah.
We don't. We also evaluated that the teams were not too many, so the hands on ground maybe might have managed. I know they would be stretched, but it was a better situation to have less CAP members than not pay the hotel,
Mm.
because this owner was an Indian guy and he was fuming. He was, I'm kicking them out. So I was like, bro, okay, fine.
No, that's crazy.
We were so stressed that day. And so we paid that money. And so the CAP members were not full. Why? Because the money we had to go to cover for the
Mm.
shortfalls of, and this is an endemic African problem. This doesn't
Yeah.
happen in W. It only happens in Africa, where people tell you
Yeah.
they are coming when they know full well they are not coming. They
It's
knew
it's
full well they are not making it.
it's one of the things that, like, it's just organizational inefficiency in terms of coming from the institutions in themselves, like being able to
Yeah,
source for funding, being able to book flights. Like,
exactly.
everyone just wants to wait till it gets to the very end of things, and we are not
Exactly.
exposed to this new way of doing things. And I think that's where you're right. We probably need, like, a, a bit of like radical approach, because these
We
things
need
happen.
radical approaches.
Need a
Like we can
radical
say, if
approach.
you don't pay by this time, you're gone. But you see, at this point, I am a passionate Pan-African. I want to help people. I want everyone to come.
Yeah,
There were people who are still paying reg fees when they arrive in cash. Others arrived and they didn't even have money. Do you know how many
it's
people didn't pay
crazy.
reg fees at that tournament?
It's
You have no
crazy.
idea. Crazy. Africans, they show up knowing
For
they don't have
Akofina, we had
money.
the same thing. A lot of people came in and they're like, "Give us rooms, but we've not paid any
I
rental."
don't have
So
money. Exactly.
it's crazy. I think we need to be a bit more, and I say this with a little bit of like passion, right? We need to be a bit more clinical. We need to think like professionals in a way. We should
Exactly.
stop thinking like friends, like we're
Like
friends, we just
friends.
come together to put together. We should think a bit more professionally. I think we'll have a lot from the tournament. By the way,
It was
so
so
what?
good.
So by the way, I want to touch on this thing because I want to give you an opportunity to
Mm,
respond to it. Because Buemo was
okay.
here on this cast, as you may have seen, and I think you
Yeah.
did allude that you had a great relationship with Buemo, but there were some skirmishes, especially around PADC.
Yeah.
And he had the
Yeah.
opportunity to be able to express this problem. Obviously, we were observers of it
Yeah.
from a distance, and we know there's no love lost. Like, you guys are still
Yeah.
friends now, we are still friends and everything. But these things happen, and I feel like it's always good to talk about it for, like you said, the knowledge hand downs, and just to also be able to reflect on it in a particular way that we can understand that, so that people can understand that these things happen, but it shouldn't create those uh, boundaries between people,
Yeah.
which sort of like go ahead to destroy societies
Yeah.
in seconds. So just giving you the opportunity to, because you definitely know what I'm talking about, so just giving you
I
the
know what you're
opportunity
talking
clear the air
about.
on your side of the story. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is on this first issue of CAP members coming, because I know I listened to that specific part of his submission. He was not happy about it. And the first thing I want to say is it's not ideally I think I understand him because he's a CAP member and his priority is CAP. but he was not looking at it from an organizational standpoint, which is we are between a rock and a hard place. I get he
Yeah.
wants his way, which he would prefer to have a cup team. I'm thinking slightly differently. So that started, so we already started off on the wrong foot. That's the
Yes.
first problem. We've started this from the Andrew situation to getting more CAP members vis-a-vis us prioritizing dealing with other debt issues, and it was not looking feasible to spend 2,500 on one ticket when the entire tournament, at that point, even this hotel issue was coming up the following day from this skirmish. And I've organized a lot of events. My intuition was telling me, don't just pay money like when the tournament has not even started. Like
Yeah.
things could just go wrong. And also, I had made a promise to some other people that in case they get their passports, we'll get that. So it was no, I was just going to spend money, but he couldn't see that. And I don't blame him. If I was CAP, I would also want all my CAP
Yeah.
members. But at that point, I was Ocom, and the executive decision was that. The second issue we had was now the one he talked about on council. And let me be honest about this situation. I think for me, it was a principled moment, but at the same time, a moment of madness. Because I think at that point, I had had it. And this is maybe just a tip to conveners, because that's why we are doing this, to speak to those people, they understand. I think at that point, a lot of things, or, our organizational team initially was supposed to be like 7 people, and a lot of them didn't make it. So imagine we were running PAUDC 4 people. Four. So it was me, Eden, Mupa, Angelica, and Mukono. So we were like 4 guys running the entire show. And I think the pressure got to us. So at some point, and me more than the others, because I think even they thought I was going crazy, because all this pressure had built up. And I think that the issue of the breaks, like just blew up the entire thing.
Yeah.
Now, why was it a moment of madness? It was a moment of madness because of the approach I took. Why was it a principled moment? Because I think what I was saying was true. And I think what I was saying was correct. And it speaks to what I've been saying throughout this podcast. What was my issue? The PAUDC break, on my knowledge and my history, has always been to octos. I have never seen a PAUDC not break to octos. Somebody can tell me of one that has never. So even Cameroon, that was smaller than Mashuja, broke to octos. So from me, my point of view was, first, institutional knowledge says, or history says, what we know from our elders. The PADC break is to octos. Now, at this point, this was a new generation of people. They felt,
Yes.
no, we must preserve the competitiveness of the break.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what was happening, but we were supposed to have some consultative meetings about this thing. And I think I was my head was somewhere else. I won't go into that story, but my head was
Yeah.
dealing with other problems. And then I came back to here. Oh, we've decided we're going to break to pre-quarters. I was like, no, this is not going to happen. And here's my problem, Erasmus. And I want people to hear this. This is so important. I think even CAP did a few things that were completely unprocedural. Anybody who has been in debate for long enough, has interacted internationally, like all those people have, they know the procedure for changing a break. The procedure for changing a break is not done after round 9 of the tournament. It is not something that happens after round 9 of the tournament. We were with you in Worlds in Madrid. Worlds had a smaller pool of speakers than it has had before. So what happened was they called a pre-council before the tournament even started and said, these are the number of teams we have. Therefore, we cannot have an ESL quarters break and an EFL semis break. It will have to be, I think, straight to finals and semis. So they cut around. But the thing was approved at what? Pre-council. Pre-council
Understand.
says, yes, the constitution is clear. These are the number of percentages for a certain break to happen. Therefore, this is a procedural thing. CAP knew before round 1 the number of teams that were at this tournament. It was not new information to CAP that there are 64 teams at the tournament. It was not new information in round 9. It was round 1 they knew what was going to happen. So why they all of a sudden, and I understood, and I think this is a culmination of many problems. There were very few CAP members, a lot is going on. People are not looking at this issue. But my argument was, then in that case, me and you cannot make the decision as to where the break happens. I think it should be octos. You think it should be quarters. We don't agree. This issue should be resolved at council. So I
Also,
took up to council and said, this is wrong. This is unprocedural. This is not how anything happens. This tournament belongs to the people, and the people must be the ones to decide where the break is going to happen. CAP cannot decide after round 9 and I make an announcement in the dining hall, like at 5 p.m., and the break is supposed to be at 8, that this thing is going to be breaking all of a sudden to Octus. Look at how you don't know how people have been processing the tournament. Some people may be intended on, maybe they are calculating, they are thinking they're still, there's a lot that goes into these things. The bare minimum we offered or we needed to have given the people is at round 1 or round, even say after day 1, say even there was a lot going on. Because this is the responsibility of CAP. After day 1,
yeah,
you say, okay, we are looking at this. This is not what we expect in terms of a quality tournament, in terms of numbers. So let's pass the information or let's discuss this on the early parts of the tournament. So I was against a unilateral. I mean, CAP says it was not unilateral, discussed and everything, but I think there was just a lot going on. There was a very huge
yeah,
miscommunication because I was not on side on it. They said no, I had said I was on side, but as I said, there was a lot going on at that moment. My point was, it is unfair for any CAP team to wake up after round 9 and realize, no, this is not right. Therefore, change the break a few hours to the break. The decision must be made in council. So I took CAP to council and I said, we are against this decision. Here are our arguments for why we are against it. We are against it because, one, it shows a very huge lack of what is it called? It removes you from the conversation, because ideally this is something that should have been discussed earlier. It's something you should be the ones who are approving, and it's something that affects you. So ideally this is a council decision, because the constitution is silent. Here's the other, and it goes back to the
yeah,
defunct constitution. The
exactly.
constitution is silent. So we have no rule. My argument is, if the constitution is silent, it's the decision of the people, not council, not CAP. Let it be decided by what? My feeling is, if you were to talk about constitutional procedure, I have history to back me, going generations. Erasmus, you've been at this tournament for a long time, even 2015. Has CAP
Yeah.
ever broken where lower than Octos?
No, it's
Never.
always Octos. Yeah.
Always
No, I think
Octos. So I'm wondering why all of a
yeah,
sudden we decide we want a competitive PUDC for the first time in 18, 15 years. Anyway, so I took them to council. I made my arguments. They made their arguments. Things were said. Things were not said. In the end, I think council was in a deadlock. I actually hear it was 6-6. Like the
yes.
council was split completely. Like they hadn't reached an agreement. And then my conveners called me aside and they were like, this is not right. Like, this
Yes.
is becoming a sideshow, and we are supposed to be running a tournament. And I saw the wisdom in what they're, because I was dragging them through a lot, and they had signed up for this political war that I had decided to start. And so I had to go to the room and just tell them, okay, guys, like we
Let's let
can
it go.
break. Let's go where they want. And eventually they voted, and I think they voted to go to pre-quarters, and that's what happened. And I think it really put a huge strife or a huge problem between CAP and me moving forward. Not me. I think me, because I don't think the other OGCOM members were too involved in this
Interacting, yeah.
fight. So what I did, and I think this is the learning moment. Like, Erasmus, let me say this in front of everyone. If you're a leader and you're not ready to learn, you should not be in leadership. So it was a very huge learning moment. And I remember I told all my OPCO members after that night, I told them, I'm not coming tomorrow morning. Like, like I'm not coming. And I realized what was going on was there had been so much pressure built in that it was now coming out in very unproductive ways, because I was
Yeah.
not resting. I was under a lot of pressure. This financial, I don't think people know this, but I'll say it here. I was also, my mind was so messed up because, do you know the tournament had a deficit of over 5-6,000 USD at the point where people are there, and I have no idea where this money is coming from. We have
Wow.
no idea how we're. You know, I ended up paying that money out of pocket. Like, I
No,
spent
you're
my
kidding me.
personal funds to clear the debts of PAUD. That tournament was like, at that point, so many things were happening. I realized this pressure is now releasing itself unproductively. I'm getting angry at CAP. I'm getting angry at participants. Things are not. So what I did is that I told Dominic was there. I told him, bro, tomorrow morning, just help me. Like, let me sleep. Let me just wake up at 10 a.m. Let me sit
Yeah.
on this bed, go eat this heavy breakfast I have not eaten in 6 days.
The
Let me
five
go
course
to
meal.
the let me walk. Let me just take a walk. Like I was like, let me release this energy. And I came
Stress.
back to my senses. And I think what the first thing I did, I think I went to every CAP member's inbox. I remember I texted
Mm,
you, I texted Umar,
yeah.
I texted Davida, I texted every CAP member. And I told them, look, bro, this was a moment of madness. I'm sorry for everything we've put you through. It's not how I usually operate.
Yes.
There's a lot
Yes.
going on, but let's finish strong. And I think most people were very open to, it's fine.
Yeah.
These things happen. Most people were just saying it, but I don't know how many people actually meant it. And I remember
No.
after the ceremony, I went and found Buer, and I was like, my friend,
Yeah. 'Cause-
because we are friends. Me and Buer
yeah.
had been friends and I'm sure
No.
we'll be friends after him. This was my fault. I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. I was under a lot of pressure. So mistakes happen. And if these mistakes happen, I hope you can find it, even if not now, to forgive us. Like we should not be enemies because we had a 1, 2, 3 day beef. Let's move on. He
No.
was
The
very
what I
open.
like. What I like about the African circuit is like we are all friends. Like regardless of all the it's crazy. Like even some of these beefs you talk about, like Edze, like all these other people. Like we
No,
used to
it's
be
not.
friends at a point, especially like because in the beginning you all go for tournaments together, you bundle up.
Yeah.
So we are friends, and I feel that has been very positive for the circuits because then you find it easy to help a random kid from Ghana DM you
Yeah.
things like that. And
Yeah.
like I know, especially like most of our exploits, and I tell everyone this, most of our exploits at the world stage in terms of some of these big European competitions that we went to eventually winning was because of you. Because like when you're on cap, we can approach you and say,
I
bruh, like
approach here.
this judge was very bad, or like
Very
this is
bad.
our feedback
The
from the
bias.
rooms. Yeah, and
Yeah,
and like what was standing, like you knew our capability was just a case of we needed the road to be cleared for us to, and
yeah,
you were certainly doing that. And that's what I also
yeah.
aim to do when I enter into those spaces. In fact, I saw what you did,
Mm.
and when I started to enter into those spaces, I'm just like, yeah, like it's of course, and I even asked you a lot of questions, especially about
You
entering
did?
into some of these things. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was just about being able to replicate it and do the same thing. So, like, there's really no love lost. Like,
There's no love lost. I
there's
hope.
no love
I hope.
lost. Yeah, no, there's no love lost. You know this for a fact. Like, would meet and we'll probably like laugh
Yeah.
about these things.
We
So,
laugh about it now, but
yeah,
I think
and
it's a learning moment even for the
yes,
next generation. It's good we are talking
yeah,
about it now, which is I think the relationship between Ocom Cap is something that I think people should really be very careful about
mm,
because we also had a problem with our Ocom when we were in Madrid, and I was
mm.
like, these are my demons from PAUDC coming because I remember there were issues and I was like, bro, I've just handled issues like this for 3 weeks. I don't have
we need to
time
double in
or,
this.
or we shouldn't be doing this again. So it's actually a problem. And I think at a point where we have to realize that sometimes these things may happen, it's
Yeah.
what you do afterwards. I think for me, it was the opportunity to learn. Like, this is a
Mm,
problem. You've made mistakes,
mm.
you have to apologize and take responsibility for the areas in which you made mistakes because we're not perfect, like we make mistakes,
Yeah. No,
and then
and
you also realize the learning curve on what to do next time.
yeah, and like for me, the measure of a man is not the moment where he's at the top. It's always like when things are down. Like how are you responding? Like it's easy for when you are winning or when things are going well for you. It's easy to pretend to be humble and all, like just stuff like
Yeah.
that. When you're down, like what do you do?
Yeah,
That's for me. I think that's the kind of material that you showed, and like you are still building your legacy, but I think it's still viewed very favorably.
yeah,
So
yeah,
just we've moved to the tail end of the
Yeah.
discussion, right? But there's one more thing I wanted to get your opinion on.
Yeah.
You saw two teams from Africa for the very first time climb up the stage in Madrid in a world final. Not only that, we also saw emotion on Ubuntu. Like for me, I'll tell you, the experience was so weird hearing a bunch of white people talking about Ubuntu.
Yeah, man. I hope one day
So,
it's black people, man.
but would and that seems to be like a crowning moment for you, especially in terms of your legacy, in terms of the hard work that you began to put in right from 2016, right within 2020 and 2021,
Yeah.
the efforts that you put in. How
Yeah.
do you there are two questions to this, the personal side of this. Do you personally feel fulfilled? Do you think there is more, or do you feel fulfilled? And secondly, what do you think the future of African debate is going to look like from here? Now you have more of us trying to apply to be DCAs on the BUDC. Do we see an African CA on like a
Yeah.
walls bid, things like that
Yeah.
moving
Why
forward? So
not?
the personal side and then
The
Africa.
future.
Yes.
So, in terms of feeling fulfilled, man, every part of you wants to feel fulfilled, but you're reminded every day that this was not even a tip of the iceberg of the potential. And I think it was, for me, there are a couple of things that happened there. The first thing was, I think one of the things is, I feel when I saw those two teams on the stage, I 100% credit to them. But there are things that I can't even say on this podcast that went putting those people in those positions. Like, it's, I can't even say it here before because I'll be cancelled by tomorrow if I say what went into it. But a lot of things went into it to ensure that we don't, we have the best chance to have people on that stage. And I think that was a moment for me in terms of a lot of hard work, understanding how systems work, lobbying, understanding a lot of the way structures work, just to create a path. Not, not, you know what the thing is? African teams operate at a disadvantage. So my
Yes,
job was to remove the disadvantage and
exactly.
create an equal path that they have a chance, just like anybody else, to be treated equally and to be given a fair chance to have the best possible outcomes. So we did a lot of things. I don't want to even talk about those ones because
Mm.
eh, I don't want to be cancelled tomorrow. People can ask me on the side what went into it.
Yes,
But
after the
more
podcast.
important, the fulfilling nature of it was, I felt, yes, if we got a shot, this was like, it was not a fulfillment, it was a validation of,
Mm.
huh, so if the conditions are put like this is what happens. So it was almost like a moment of, it was an aha moment.
Aha
So this is
moments.
what we need to do to ensure that we are able to get to this level. And at
Yeah.
that moment, I figured out the revolution starts now. Like, it was not a
Mm.
fulfilling moment. In fact, it was a moment of, now we
Reckoning.
know. Like, this is
Yes.
a reckoning moment of, so the methodology is this and this is how we follow. So
Mm.
one of the things that I've been very, very intent about is doing small things. People won't see that. I think it will culminate maybe 10 years from now when we have open teams from Africa speaking at the open final. And I think it's going to be a collective effort of different people in positions of power, the critical mass we need to create, and then, as we mentioned in the earlier in the podcast, an intentional direction provided by leaders as to how we
Mhm.
are going to change this structure. And I am going to talk about those things maybe another day because I
Yeah.
have figured out, or I saw that, I mean, there's still a lot to be done, but if certain one, two, three, four things are done, we have a chance. We actually have a
Yes.
chance. So in terms of fulfillment, it was not a moment of fulfillment. It was a
Mhm.
moment of reckoning. Now we know. Like, those guys put in a lot of. I know Prosper, Elisha, Wesley,
Vincent.
Atapa,
Vincent.
Vincent. They will not tell you this, but they were in my room like every day. Like, oh, this is going on, this is going on. And then we have to delicately maneuver all those situations just to, remove biases, create, what is it called? Allow favorable, not favorable, equal opportunity for them to be heard.
Yeah.
You would sometimes we would have to put African judges in those rooms, or even if not, we put the best judges in those rooms. We try
Yes.
our best to ensure that they're given a fair chance. Now, it's not something you do intentionally. I think it's
Yeah.
just offering. It's not like manipulation. It's you don't intentionally say no. I want these people to be judged here, but it's more like if this is going wrong, these are the reports we are getting. We
Yeah.
would like to avoid XYZ situation. So that in terms of the future, I think Africa. Let me speak about the motion because you mentioned that a lot
Yes.
of Africans are not happy about it. Like these guys don't know what they're saying. These guys don't understand what they're into. My guy, I posted or I set that motion at an African tournament recently. Man, the kids ran the same exact things. I don't understand. Like we have such a protective, what is it called? Like we feel like
Mentality.
our ideas are ours only, but
Yeah.
we don't want other people. In fact, I don't think they did it to the best of their ability. I think there are some critical elements of Ubuntu that they didn't
Was
know,
left out.
so they
Yeah.
were unable to express them. But I think they engaged the debate in the more broader sense of the clashes that exist in the round.
Yeah.
And you know what that is? After that moment, because I've traveled a lot and I've gone to different places, everybody keeps asking me, I read about this thing, by the way. This is
Yes.
what I read. Is it
Yes.
true? Is this what it's about? In fact, I was with Hadar in India and she was telling me about what her interpretation of it looks like right now.
Yeah.
And you know what that thing was supposed to do? It wasn't supposed to be a perfect debate. If you listen to the speech I gave before the motion was announced, I said, every time we sit here and we talk about Africa in a world setting, it's war, it's poverty, it's disease, it's dictatorship, it's
Yeah.
corruption. That is not what we are. We are more than that. So why don't we have the more positive conversations and to be given the biggest stage in the world debating to have that conversation about Africa and our philosophies and our communities, and yet people still think no, they didn't do, they should not have. This is like, bruh, how else are we going to spread the knowledge and the know-how of our things to these people if it's not through these things? Otherwise, if
Mm.
we leave it to them, they will just set another, this house will invade Zimbabwe. That's what they. So
Yeah.
we must even do Erasmus, like anyone, Davida who is on DCA, anyone who enters those positions, you must actively fight to ensure that the bias, and it's not sometimes not even their fault, they have just been conditioned to think like that,
Yeah.
of Africa as a dilapidated, poor, corrupt, dictator filled, coup filled, disease ridden place. We must stop that. We must start having conversations about things that matter in Africa, the
Mm.
changes, the positive things, because otherwise, these people will never be able to see. And I kid you not, that video has been watched by hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Not all those people now know what Ubuntu is. They didn't know it before.
Yeah.
That's why we do what we do. We put those issues there so that people can listen and go and learn, which is the
Mm.
World's Final is the most
Mm.
watched debate ever in a year. So
Yes.
let hundred thousands of people go and learn what Ubuntu is. It's been set in even different regions. I've been watching some tabs from the people are still using it to today. So it people are invested in that conversation
Mm.
happening. So I thought the motion, it served its purpose. It was not supposed to
Mm.
be an intricate debate on African philosophy. It was a moment for us to change the narrative. It was a
Mm.
moment for us to show people there's other things you can talk about these debates. It's not always, and even if they didn't do their best, I thought the teams really tried. Like on
Yeah.
the issue
Yeah, they
of
did.
clashes, we covered most of the things we would say ourselves. Maybe we would have
Anyway.
more context, but the clashes and the principles they ran are the exact same things I think Africans will run. Probably Africans will just be more contextual about what it really
Exactly.
means and that experience and how it feels like. So that's about the motion. The future, man, the future is bright, Erasmus. Like I've been recently invested in schools debating. That's where most of my work is now. And it was
Mhm.
from just observing what other regions have done. We must develop the future. We were with Boso in Qatar, and he was telling us that he started debating when he was 8 years old. I think when
Wow.
they moved from Korea to Australia and he couldn't speak the language properly. So he entered debating as a means to learn the language. But what I want you to understand here is that this guy has been debating since he was
8.
8 years old. And then you're starting debating when you're 19 and you expect to have an equal chance to beat this guy. No way. It's not going to happen. So, one of the
Mm,
revolutions I think of the future is we must invest in the bottom structures, invest in the schools from primary to secondary to university, and then we will create the critical mass of debaters with know-how of how to compete. And then those are the people who create the funnel to the top.
mm,
So look at you,
mm.
Erasmus, with what you've achieved. When did you start debating? I think properly. Was it second year?
2017. Yes, yeah,
Exactly. But how are you going to compete against some of these kids? Look at all the top debaters. Kids like, I mean, I can name drop a few of them, like Jason Shaw. He's been
yeah,
debating since primary or secondary. Look at
yeah,
Naomi from Canada, another high school debater,
yeah.
Techway, high school debate. All these people that sometimes are idolized. Sometimes some of them, yes, started in uni, but most of them, if you track their progress, it starts way back. So, as African debaters, we must invest in the education of those who come from the bottom structures.
Mm,
That's primary schools and high school. Like every country must make an intentional effort to develop those people to the highest levels possible. And then from there, those kids will then go up to form the critical mass of competitors needed to go and compete at the highest levels possible, both for African institutions and for international institutions. I
mm.
would be happy, even if two Africans paired from Oxford and they won. I'm happy. It's cool.
Ah,
It's
yes.
fine. You started here and you grew to that level. It's fine. But for more Africans to go, we must invest in the bottom structures and then build it up so that those people can compete, and then invest in the critical mass of judges, participants, all the
Yeah.
things we were talking about, so that at least when more of us are visible, we can be able to then influence the change that we need.
It's really really refreshing to speak about African debates in this way in terms of the progress that we've made in terms of the prospects which exist. And I for one think that 10, 15 years from now we're going to see these things manifesting and we're going to be like a powerhouse within debates. And I think that like this podcast is serving its purpose in being able to highlight that the African debates community in itself is a thriving community. I hate it to the core when people think, oh, it's just like a small community we just started recently. We have a rich history, like rich
Rich.
history. Um, and we need to bring it back to the fore. And this time we need to televise it. This time we need to be conscious of it. We need to hammer it down people. We need to get them
Mm,
believing again in order to change the
mm,
circuit. And I see the stuff that you do in terms of organizing tournaments for these kids continually. Like
mm.
it's like every week I see you organizing a
It's
new tournament.
literally every weekend. Literally every weekend.
And I see you pop up in new countries, taking kids to different
Yeah,
places. I know people who do that charity Itu, Eze
yeah.
himself, couple of other guys. So we are just going to do our absolute best to support you guys every time. And for me, as long as I'm still here till I give birth to maybe my first son or something like that, I'm just going to
Yeah,
always support in a way that I can. So
yeah.
we're going to wrap up the show, but we usually give the opportunity to our guests to talk about stuff that's happening in their lives. It's just for you to sort of like advertise yourself to a certain degree. What's Let us know what's going on in your life. What message you leave to the current crop of debaters and those coming after you.
um I think my like what's going on in my life. So I can maybe say this, like over the last few years, after, as you mentioned, I developed a reputation of some sort in debating. I started doing a bit of coaching, and one of the things that really happened that I think maybe I should speak about is we founded a social enterprise called the African Debate Academy, which is supposed to be providing quality debate education to students from Africa. Of course, right now we are limited to East Africa, but of course, in the next 10 years, we view ourselves as being something that happens across the continent. And I remember at the time I started this thing, I had gotten so many offers to go and teach debate in different countries like
Mm.
China, Korea, Canada, UK, Qatar. Like guys were like, "You come, come, come! Like we have jobs, come." And I remember every time I kept asking myself, like, if I go, who will remain to do the
Yeah,
work? African debaters, like they're easiest whenever it comes to educating. And I think the only opportunities that are available are outside Africa. And so we end up
yeah.
going, develop Asian kids, they win worlds, and then the Africans are left here with almost nothing. So I was like,
Andrews.
well,
Andrews.
nobody, Andrews is actually, Andrews is in Hong Kong, yeah?
He's in Hong Kong. He's teaching Asian kids how
Yeah,
to beat
perfect
African kids in
example.
the
Like the best African
future.
debate. They go to Hong Kong, they develop the best debaters in the world there. Those kids win worlds. Then we meet at the shaft and talk about why Africa is not doing well. So I was like, bruh, I'm not going to participate in this. And I'm sure they have every right to do it. Don't get it. I'm not
Yes,
bashing them.
yeah.
I get that the best opportunity because they also have to take care of themselves
Yes,
are there. But
exactly.
I'm not going to do that. I had gotten all the offers and I was like, let me start at home. Like let me see if this is possible. And over the past year you realize that the amount of demand for debate education is massive in Africa.
Mm.
Like over the past year, like you organize a tournament for kids, bro, and 1,200 kids
Wow.
show up and you're like, where are all of you from? Like you all just want to debate, and they're like, they love it so
Yeah.
much. And that keeps you going every day in terms of trying to create those opportunities for those people. And then the other thing I was very intentional about is, in as much as these opportunities exist, I wanted ours to be accessible. So we
Mm.
offer a lot. We run very accessible programs for
Mm.
anybody who wants to learn how to debate to learn. So that has been my mission for the past year and a half, just creating these platforms for debate education. We do local events, we go abroad with kids, and very soon you'll be seeing us with kids at Harvard,
Mm.
Yale. We have to put our kids in those spaces
Yes.
from when they are very young and they
Yes.
understand this is the challenge. And so when
Yes.
they come back, they're not working to be village heroes. They are working to be international champions. So that's part of the mindset of doing what we do. So me, I'm always very keen on sending kids to travel to different countries and debate in those
Mm.
countries. I don't care whether you win, just go and see what is the standard, what is the level, and then come back home and implement that radical shift mentally and also in the way other people view it. So that has been what I've been up to. It's been a very challenging ride. So remember, when I was telling you, like the PAUDC drama is going on at the
Yeah.
same time. Is I've sent my first delegation of kids to South Africa. So imagine some kids are in South Africa and you're getting 100 calls. You're in PAUDC and things are also not going well. And I remember that moment was, as you said, eh, that moment that breaks you. I was like,
Yes.
bruh, that was a breaking moment. And I was like, oh, it's like all this pressure coming from all angles. I was like, hey, man, we have to die in this sport. Clearly, this is what we are
We
built
are
for
born
doing.
to
So
do. Yeah.
we just picked it up from there. From PAUDC, I just went on, and I mean, we've done quite a lot. I think so far we've reached like over 10K kids, which is a
Wow.
lot. Like imagine having
That's a
10K
lot.
kids come through your program. It's crazy. So
10K
we've
of
done a
everything
lot of
is a lot.
it's too much. And imagine it's a one-man army. So it's a
Yeah.
lot that needs to go on. But that's what I've been up to. I'm also trying to see where my place is in international debating. I think my time is not up. So
Mm.
I'm trying to find out what to do next. I'm not going to like apply for DCA ships. I think I've already done that. Other
Yeah.
people have now, to do that. You guys and the guys whoever gets those positions. I mean, it's fine, but there's a role I still have to play, whether it's advisory.
Mm.
Who knows? I might even see a worlds one day. Like, who
Hopefully.
says no? Who says no?
Hopefully.
Why is it that? Africans are the only people who nobody ever looks for to CA. Like you're willing to
Ah,
put, have you seen the bids the way they come?
yeah,
One North American, one Asian, one European. At least there must be Europe and Asia. They can
yes.
flip the other. Why is it the, and then recently I realized with the Panama bid, we finally got the first LATAM CA, which was a fantastic moment.
Mhm.
Juanita, amazing person,
Yeah,
worked so hard. And I was like, this is an inspiring moment. So if
exactly.
we stick to this and we do it, we can also get an African
Yes,
on those positions. Why not?
yes.
And then lastly, I'm saying this here because this is important. We are definitely going to be putting together a bid for WDC and WSDC from Africa. Somehow we must do it. So that is
Looking forward
coming.
to that.
We are looking for the correct combinations of people. I think
Mhm.
the experiences of PAUDC, and I think we've organized over 30 tournaments this year, and next
Mhm.
year we'll organize 50 something. I think we are building our capacity to be able to organize even worlds. Who says we
Mhm.
can't organize? The last time Worlds was here was in Cape Town, and it was a
Yeah,
bunch of, UCT. I don't want to say
yeah.
people. Point. It was not. It was not
It's not
collectively
African.
African. Okay, they're Africans.
Yeah.
No, no, all their rights, but it was not. It was. It's not proper.
Authentic, authentic,
We
authentic.
need to put a proper African spice to the African bid. So we are working on that to see if we can get at least WSDC and WDC to come to Africa. And those are the projects. So let's hope
Mm.
and let's wait and see how this will go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Masheria. It looks like you are not done yet, and that makes all of us happy because, like we were talking about, like institutionalizing debate and like having some of the people who have gone ahead stay back and continue to plow in
Yeah.
the
So
knowledge.
I'm going to roll so that you guys can go work for like big banks, Erasmus. And I want you, when you get to your point
No,
of power, you will see a letter from Macharia requests
who
to
knows?
sponsor WBC from
Yeah,
Nairobi, Kenya. And you must
yeah.
push those things in your
It's
organization.
those opportunities that we're looking for, right? Because like when I went into my organization, if I mention
Mm,
their name, my the video might be censored, so
mm,
I'll just stick with. But we saw a lot of organizations that they
mm.
support a debate organization actually. So
Yeah,
it will now be a good
exactly.
point to bring in like the African conversation. So we should definitely have that chat behind the
And
scene.
that's
Yeah.
what we were talking about. Like have
Yeah.
Africans in other positions so that
Yes.
you can back to debate in one way, whether it's through knowledge, whether it's through pushing for even sponsorships for people from your countries. Like find small ways of contributing
Mhm.
back. Whilst those of us are doing the other work, you guys also play your role as an community within and without debate to support debate activities across Africa. So that's why I don't
Exactly.
mind when people go and do different things. It's fine. We are coming for you later. We are going to call. We will call.
Definitely, definitely, we are available. We are available. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Mashere. I think it has been a lovely conversation. I enjoyed every bit of it. The time has almost flown. Hopefully, we'll be able to break this down into several parts so
So
people are going
surprised.
to
How many
enjoy
parts is this?
it. Yeah. But thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. This has been another episode of the Shafts podcast. I do hope that you did enjoy it. Masheria is continuing to stay on the line, but I would end it over here. And we do want to remind everyone that we are still on other platforms like Spotify. Follow our social media pages, which is the Shaft Podcast, and continue to subscribe. And thank you all so much. And we love you. Thank you.